Attention. Due to the nature of the films discussed, the Civil Gore podcast may contain adult language and themes.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to episode 24 of the Civil Gore podcast.
We are climbing up in the numbers. Can you imagine? 24 episodes already.
Hard to believe. That's 6 months of solid episodes. Haven't missed a week.
No, not yet. Well, I mean, technically, you guys don't know that we did miss weeks. We just did them all in 1 week. But I'll let you in on that little secret.
We had a couple of half episodes in there, which is why our numbering scheme, you may think you've listened to more than 24. We actually had the 3 mini-sodes, and we labeled those half episodes, so...
Like right now, it's easy to track, but like years later, when you're going back fondly to all the original episodes of Civil Gore, when we're in the hundreds, you'll be like, "What?" But yeah, so.
Well, we are continuing our Summer Slaycation series of Leatherface, which we covered last week with the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and this week we have a bevy of movies.
Yeah.
To break out some vocabulary on you. Let's see, we had what? 7?
Yeah,
8?
I think there's 7.
4.
I mean, technically, there's that documentary they did. I guess a family portrait, which I didn't get a chance to watch. I would like to have watched it, but I just literally under the wire finished right before we went into recording. I finished with Texas Chainsaw: A New Beginning. So, sorry, not A New Beginning. That's Friday the 13th. The Beginning.
The Beginning.
See,
yeah.
horror movies too close.
How could you forget? It's such a great movie. I'm being sarcastic.
It's definitely the most brutal, but we'll get into that when we go through our little once we get through our housekeeping, steal again from Coastal Radio. We haven't stole from them in a while, so we had to throw that in there.
About time.
Yeah. And speaking of Leatherface,
Leatherface.
Yeah.
That's our next.
Yeah, there we go.
It's the female version. Her name's Leatherface.
That is, I like that actually. And actually, based on, it's funny that we may have actually joked about that, but when we'll get to this one down in the little the new Leatherface preview, there's some interesting plot to that's coming up. So we'll go into that, and it kind of goes along with that Leatherface kind of thing, which we'll, like I said, we'll get to it. But what I was going to say was, is speaking of leather faces, my face may feel like that by the end, because actually, Tim, as I mentioned right before, I'm actually drinking the Woot Stout, which is that collaboration we had before with Will Wheaton and Stone Brewery.
Mm-hmm, that's a good one.
So if I start slurring by the end of this episode, we'll know why now.
Yeah, and I've got one of my favorites, Victory Golden Monkey, which is the Belgian-style triple with some spice added to it. And that's a solid. It's a 9.5.
Yeah. Oh, so you guys could have some really unusual, we might have to name the episode Civil Slur by the end of the night as our words are incoherent.
Well, let's get right into it. Our first chop. Okay, so this week, I really didn't have time to watch a lot because, as you heard already, we had 7 movies to go through. But I did get time to sneak one of my backlog project movies in, and that was The Two Faces of Dr. Jekyll. This one came on a double feature disc with The Gorgon, which I have not watched yet. And I love these Hammer double features that they released. They're absolutely fantastic. Now, the great thing I loved about Hammer is that they would take these classic monsters and then they would kind of twist them a little bit and provide a new spin on them. And so I figured they would do the same with Dr. Jekyll, which they indeed did. So in The Two Faces of Dr. Jekyll, sort of the same familiar story. You've got a scientist, Dr. Jekyll, who has invented this serum that he can inject and turn into Mr. Hyde.
Oh, so Mr. Hyde is in it, right? Okay, because
yes.
The Two Faces of Mr. Jekyll, I thought maybe there is no Hyde in this one.
Yeah, no. Well, that would have been a great twist, but this one was kind of cool, too. What he does is, Dr. Jekyll, typically in the movies, Dr. Jekyll is the clean-cut, nice guy, and Mr. Hyde is like the furry, grotesque, monstrous guy, right? Well, in this one, they kind of flipped it. Dr. Jekyll, I wouldn't say he's monstrous, but he's got the beard and the bushy eyebrows and everything. He's like the hairy guy. And when he turns into Mr. Hyde, he becomes this like suave, blonde gentleman.
That's funny because that's what, when I was a kid and I first heard that title at all, that's how I assumed it was, because JEKYLL sounds something like would be the rambunctious or like evil one, and Mr. Hyde seems like some normal dude.
Yeah, no, but that's actually how this was.
Oh, I like that. I gotta see this
so,
now.
Yeah, it's kind of neat. But what was funny about it, what was absolutely hysterical, is Dr. Jekyll, obviously the actor does not have a full beard or anything, so he had this absolutely awful fake beard and mustache and eyebrows when he was Dr. Jekyll. And then obviously they just took all that crap off when he was Mr. Hyde.
Oh, good. So it's definitely on the cheap.
Yeah, so every time you see Dr. Jekyll, he looks like completely fake. But it kind of adds to the charm of it.
Is this in that box set that we discussed? I think was it last week or the week before, where they have that big Hammer box set coming out?
I'm not sure. I need to go back and look at the titles to see, because I don't really want to double dip. But so far, I think there's only 2 of the double features they've released. So this box set may be my best bet at getting some of the other titles.
Right. Yeah. I mean,
I may be forced to double dip.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to buy that set, because based on for everything you've told me about some of these Hammer things, they just sound like right up my alley. So I want to definitely going to buy that.
Definitely got a charm to them.
Yeah, and we love charm.
But anyway, yeah. This one's not one of their best efforts, in my opinion, just because I've never liked Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. I don't think it's scary at all. So it's like less scary than The Mummy.
I mean, yeah, and David Hasselhoff is singing in it, right? Oh, no, wait, that's the play. Sorry.
No. Yeah. So it didn't really appeal to me from that sense, but as far as like the twist they gave it, and Christopher Lee's in it with some big old mutton chops, which is cool. Yeah, so in that perspective, I enjoyed it. Maybe not quite as much as some of the Hammer horror films that I have, but still a fun evening. I enjoyed it.
I think I will pick that one up, even if it's not in the box set. Maybe I'll just have to add, because now like Tim has his backlog things. I have I like to increase my front log, I guess, because I just keep buying things that sound cool. And like Tim adds to this, because like now I know if I buy that box set and this one is not in it, well, first thing I'll do is I'll probably research to see if they're coming out with a second box set. But then if not, if I don't see anything of that, I'll probably start buying the ones I don't have, because I'm also, with my DVD and Blu-ray curses, I have a completionist attitude, so that is why I own the infamous Plural Art 2, because there are things I drew the line at, like after Home Alone 2, my regular movie collection, I stopped.
Oh, you didn't get the one that was shaped like a paint bucket?
No.
That has like Home Alone 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
No, but don't think I didn't have that in my hand at one moment to look at it. But I did promptly put it down, because I remember that I still have nightmares about watching the third one after our good friend Steve Cohn, again with as we mentioned him before, he's the one that we love to kill on Friday the 13th, the game. He told me how great it was and how funny it was, so my friend Mark and I rushed to watch it as soon as I guess it came out on video or whatever at the time, and we never forgave him for that. So there are some sequels I do draw the line at, but I do try and get the whole thing. Like right now, it's irking me that I don't have a proper Leatherface Texas Chainsaw Massacre 3 on Blu-ray, because I don't know if they ever released it or it's out of print or something, and I don't have the fourth one, which, not that I want it, but I kind of have to have it now. So. But yeah, so you see where I'm going with that.
Well, one thing I did not get to see this weekend, unfortunately, was Annabelle Creation.
And look, because of you, it suffered now.
I know. Well, it was getting really good reviews, and surprisingly, Olivia, my wife, told me she wants to go see it.
Oh, look at that.
Which surprised me, because she typically stays away from like the Conjuring stuff. It's a little too scary for her. But she said she actually wanted to go see this one, so I have to wait till next weekend and see it with her. So I had a good excuse.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, you got to wait. And actually, they see, it's like I think she's getting Civil Gore fever now. See, hearing the podcast like being
slowly
recorded in the other room is now getting her into it. Like hey, Julie the same way. I mean, she's always kind of watched horror movies and stuff, but usually the more obscure stuff, she'll if I'm watching for a podcast, she'll kind of just like not pay attention or anything. But she was actually watching. She watched a couple of the Texas Chainsaw Massacres with me. Her reactions are kind of funny. She actually, of all the ones that she sat through the whole thing on, was 4. So that's pretty funny on itself. But yeah, so yeah, see, our wives are getting the Civil Gore fever through osmosis of just subconsciously hearing the podcast be recording in the other room, and they're getting excited.
Well, the dismemberment this week is not too exciting unless you're a TV fan. We have 3 television box sets that are pretty good, and then we have 3 kind of not so great movies. So let's see.
And I haven't heard of any of them.
Yeah, the first one is The Walking Dead complete 7th season, which Brian would not know anything about.
I'm 7 seasons behind.
Because he's 7 seasons behind, but yep, there's that. Lucifer complete 2nd season. This is one I didn't catch. I don't think I bothered with Lucifer. Did you watch that one at all?
No. Yeah, I mean, I've heard of it. I didn't get to. It's hard for me to watch TV shows.
I don't have. It's really hard for me to keep up with all the TV that's out right now. I try to catch all the horror stuff, but it's difficult.
It really is and the thing is, there's such great ones out there. So it's like, and but then with the movies, and we're trying to. It's just hard to catch up. I mean, like, you really sometimes need these just binge watch sessions to try and go through it all.
Yeah, it's not like you can just watch the good stuff because it's all good. A lot of it's all good. The last one now, I have seen this one. This is Ash vs. Evil Dead, the complete 2nd season, which is a phenomenal show. I love it.
Yeah, I've only watched the first half of season 1, so I'm behind in that, obviously, but at least I'm in that.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's a great one if you're an Evil Dead fan. It's just like having a follow-up to Army of Darkness, basically. Just a little bit of time later. Bruce Campbell's a little older, a little wiser, but just as funny and just as violent and very, very violent and just as gruesome as you would remember from the Evil Dead.
I was hoping you would have said a little older, a little wiser, and a little more groovy, but you didn't. So you missed opportunity. Yeah.
See, that's why I have a co-host. So I can go back and edit that stuff.
Right, yeah. When we're done, we'll just go back and recreate that line.
All the jokes we thought of while we were recording, just go back and put them in. People think, God, those guys are
so
brilliant.
Witty. Look at them right off the cuff.
They think on the fly. Yeah. Right off the cuff. Next up, we have Jezebeth, 2011. A devil-worshipping sadist, Jezebeth Blandy.
Tongue twister.
Played by Brie Michaels. Is at war with God and discovers a 19th century diary that details the summoning of a demon.
Good segue, I guess, from Evil Dead.
Yeah, I mean, I never heard of that one. 2011, so it came out a few years ago.
Isn't there a movie called Jezebel or something, though, I think?
Probably. I mean, that's the common term, Jezebel.
So I thought I saw that one, yeah.
Then we have a couple from the 80s. We have one called not The Effects. It's called Effects. And this one sounds interesting.
Yeah.
So you have some crew members of a company shooting a horror film, and they begin to suspect that the killings in the movie are real and that they're actually making a snuff film.
I want to say I saw this way back in the day on cable.
It sounds really cool. Wasn't that kind of like the plot of Return to Horror High?
I think so. I know it's not an original plot. Maybe then it was, but it definitely, through the course of time, it's been done.
Like, I vaguely remember Return to Horror High, and I may be completely off base here, but I kind of remember that one being like a film shoot.
I mean, think about it. Was that one urban legend movie? I think it was the second one, The Final Cut, was kind of similar to that, where they were filming movies and things were people getting killed on it. And I think there's this is another one that had that similar plot that I've seen. But this one I want to say that used to be on cable all the time, because I'm looking at it. It's like in 1980. Right, Friday the 13th came out then. I want to say like there was that horror that was in the same time period because that when it came on cable as well too, because that's right about when I got cable, like about a year later. So I'm gonna have to look that one up to see if that is the one I saw.
So next up we have The Slayer from 1982, and we have a group of people. I'm not going to list them all. Become stranded on a rugged isle and face off against a supernatural beast. So I don't know. I'd have to go look some of those up. I'm just not familiar with them. Some of them may be on Shudder. I'll have to go check that out.
By the way, just another thing, if you didn't want to see effects already, one of the actors in it is none other than Tom Savini. So that,
really?
So I bet you he plays an effects guy in it, which would be just hilarious. And I think I want to. Oh, and Nancy Allen actually is played as an extra in this. So yeah, I think I might have seen this. Now that the more I see some of the little bits about this. And so an image of it, I think I might have seen this way back in the day.
It sounds the most intriguing out of that whole batch, I think.
Yeah, so, I might have to pick this one up.
I'll definitely check that one out.
Yeah. Okay, cool. This one looks really cool. I think I'm going to try and get this one. Okay.
So theatrical releases for August 18th. Crickets.
Yeah, I know. I love
Crickets.
Tim put on the
Bueller,
rundown.
Bueller.
Nothing.
With a period.
With a period, yeah.
It was so sad. It's
Yeah,
just like nothing.
And it's not even in a different font. Like theatrical releases, the way Tim does the rundown, it's like in italics, and the title of the thing is in bold print and the year, and this just nothing. I sense Tim's like the gap in Tim's excitement of being doing the theatrical release rundown section.
Nothing. Well, that proves your point about the summer movies and when Annabelle was released. Like, there's not a whole lot coming out right now.
So
it's kind of a dead season because you've got all the big summer blockbusters have already come and gone. And you really don't have anything to look forward to until you start hitting the fall releases.
Right, and then it just picks up.
Fall stuff.
Ooh.
Yeah.
There are so many things I want to see pretty much from now through December, leading all the way up till to, of course, my I know it's a horror podcast, but everyone that knows me knows what I am counting down the days for. The Last Jedi.
Yeah, let's hope that's not a horror show.
No, I don't think it will be. Well, at least not for me. I mean, listen, I still go on saying how much I love the Phantom Menace. So, where does that take me?
Okay, well, let's get into Mr. Leatherface. So last week we talked about the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. This week we start things off with Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2 from 1986, directed by Tobe Hooper, written by L.M. Kit Carson. L.M. Kit Carson. That's how he's listed on IMDb.
I was like, that's...
They just usually call him Kit Carson. In the
I never saw that LM before, actually.
Yeah. Starring Dennis Hopper, Carolyn Williams, Jim Cito. We screwed his name up last week, so we'll screw it up again this
consistent.
week. Yeah. This one is a crazy, crazy movie. I picked up the Scream Factory Special Edition, Collector's Edition of this, which is just, oh my God. It's got 4 commentaries, I think. 3 or 4 commentaries.
I need to get that version. I just have the bare bones.
Yeah, it is packed to the gills with extras. It took me forever to get through this, and that's not a bad thing because I thoroughly enjoyed it. But this is a strange, strange movie, strange sequel, especially coming out 12 years after the original. I had not remembered much about it except for Chop Top, of course.
Right, how do you forget him?
Yeah, you can't forget him. He's like burned into my brain. But I had just forgotten the tone of this movie is so crazy. Whereas the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre was no comedy. It was very serious, very dark, very gritty. This one is a lot more satirical, intentionally so. Tobe Hooper did not want to do the same thing. He did not want to do a straight sequel to the original film. So this almost comes off as like a dark comedy or almost a cartoon.
It almost like you wouldn't think he did it. It's so different from the first one.
Right, yeah, it's amazing how different it is. So, of course, it still has the great Tobe Hooper characters, namely Chop Top, played by Bill Moseley, who I got to see at Mad Monster Party,
cool.
Which was cool, because that was kind of a Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2 reunion convention. He's kind of the spiritual ancestor to the hitchhiker from the first film, kind of has the same quality, maybe a little more extreme. And he's got this metal plate in his head, I guess from Vietnam
that
or whatever.
Freaked me out.
And he keeps
every time
picking the flesh off of it. And he's got like this coat hanger and he lights the end of it. And then he like burns pieces of his flesh scalp off and eats it. It's one of the most disturbing characters I think I've ever seen on film.
You know, when you get a cut and you don't want to touch it because it's so tender, you're trying to avoid it. Well, he goes like right at it every time. It's like, like Tim said, he burns the little tip of it. So now it's hot and yeah.
Oh God. The old man from the first film makes his return. Of course, he's now has a name, Drayton Sawyer, or as he is known, the Cook. So
right, the Cook.
He's a chili champion, and you know what his chili's made out of. Don't have to tell you that.
And he's got that weird like truck, like with the big setup in the front. Like what is that? It's almost like an office.
Yeah,
he's got on the front of his truck.
And then you have this crazy, crazy turn by Dennis Hopper, who
he's brilliant.
Who's absolutely brilliant in this movie. And I watched all the behind the scenes features and stuff. Like Dennis Hopper, I don't think really wanted to do this movie at all. but then when he showed up and finally agreed to it, he just went batshit crazy on it. So,
oh my God, did he
plays
ever?
This crazy guy called Lieutenant Lefty Enright, and he's there to get revenge on the Sawyer family for killing some member of his family. I can't remember now.
Yeah, so it's Sally and Franklin. I guess is his niece and nephew, so that he's related to them.
Okay, yeah, that's right. So it does have a direct connection in more ways than one. And then you also have the return of Grandpa. And there's a kind of a
still alive,
and he's got kind of like a reenactment of the scene from the first one with the wash tub and the grandpa hit her, grandpa hit her.
Yeah,
but it's a great movie. The first time I watched it, I was like, "What the hell is this?" Because it is nothing like the original film. But having had to watch it like 4 times for the Blu-ray, I just fell more and more in love with it because it is so crazy and so out there. And Carolyn Williams is absolutely fantastic.
She's great.
And she was just so as bubbly and exactly as you would think she was from this movie. It was how she was in real life at the convention. She was just a bundle of energy. Yet it also stars Lou Perryman, who played LG, which is kind of her, I guess, her assistant at the radio station.
I really liked him.
Yeah, because Carolyn Williams plays Stretch, who is the DJ. And this guy's great. Wears a big old cowboy hat. He's just a really funny character. Did you know that he was murdered in real life?
Oh, wow. Really?
In 2009, he was murdered by this crazy guy with an axe.
Oy.
So he kind of got a real horror movie ending, which is kind of sad.
Oh my God,
it's kind of disturbing when I found that out on the behind the scenes stuff. It was kind of eerie, but
yeah, and he really was a good character in this too, because he had the comedic bit, he had the typical like rambunctiousy kind of guy thing, but he's also had a heroic moment. He was like an all-around, really, surprisingly, in this kind of a movie, you got such a well-rounded character, so to speak,
Yeah, and everybody talks so fondly of him on the behind-the-scenes stuff. I mean, they absolutely loved him as a person, not just as a character. So, yeah, it was kind of sad to find that out. But the movie itself is really funny, really gory. The Drayton Sawyer character is just completely over the top. He gets to go crazy with this role, and he just makes every bit of it, and an absolute joy to watch.
And I have to say, one of the opening sequence, where they meet those 2 weirdo dudes on the highway, and that was one of the coolest scenes. I loved that, and they actually made a little bit of I think it was one of the remakes or maybe it was 4. I don't know. One of them had a similar sequence in it where they did that, where it was like the guy was driving and they had the chainsaw out. But what was really cool was just, I thought like that, because at that point you didn't know what was going on, and it was so cool. And the fact that they made it into such an integral plot point that it was being recorded on the radio.
Yeah.
They basically just didn't do it for the hell of it. So yeah, that part was really cool though. The one thing I joked about though, I was like, how long is this bridge they're on? Because it seemed like it was like a...
Well, yeah, they actually made fun of that in a lot of the behind the scenes featurettes and the commentaries.
Oh, they did?
Yeah, because the bridge itself is tiny. Like if you go and visit it, it's barely anything, and they had to just keep driving back and forth along the same stretch of bridge over and over.
Because I was gonna say, it's like I think there's a shot actually you could see the entire bridge in the background, and it's short, but the way the scene goes, you would think it was like the Virginia Chesapeake bridge and tunnel system, which for those you don't know, what is it, like 17 miles long?
Yeah.
So yeah,
and it's worth mentioning that that opening sequence that you like so much, Tom Savini did the effects for that.
Oh, see, there you go. I know. See, I should have known because it was so well done. It was just really cool, because think about it, right? And this is what I was thinking when I watched it. The first movie, she escaped by being able to get into a truck and get away in a car. And this, it's like shows you right off the bat, like, hey, you know what? Car's not saving you this time.
Yeah.
Even though it was definitely done in like a less horror, more comedic slant to that whole sequence, it was creepy though to some degree to realize like, okay, now you can't even drive away from these wackos. They're coming to get you.
It's a great movie. The only thing I would caution you is don't go into it thinking you're going to get a film like Texas Chainsaw Massacre. You have to go in kind of expecting something a little more campy. And I hate to say campy because that sounds like a negative term,
right?
Which it really isn't in this case. The campiness or the comedy actually works in this instance. So don't take that as a negative, but definitely go in expecting a more lighthearted, if that's possible, in a movie about chainsaw killings.
Right. Like a way to kind of describe it is like that little, that like that awkward wacko-ness part of, of the original movie in the dinner scene where it's not played for laughs, but, you kind of have that weird little like uncomfortable chuckle to it, and you're like, oh, this guy's so bizarre, so it's like they took that and said, we're gonna make an entire movie based on that kind of thing, but actually play it for laughs to some degree.
Right. It's great. It's one of those that you definitely need to watch more than once, because the first time you have to kind of get your mind over the shock of the change in tone,
right,
to really grasp it. But when you watch it and repeatedly, you start seeing the brilliance of all those little scenes and the acting and that kind of stuff. So
I mean, and based on the way they did, when we talk about Texas Chainsaw, the 3D version, the way they took it, if you think about it, you could almost just treat this as not a sequel anyway. Just think of it as his own movie and enjoy it, because basically 3 and 4 were so like, really this was a weird franchise. I mean, because between the remakes and the reboots and the sequels that they decided don't exist, I mean, it's just, there's no way you can watch it. Almost, it's hard to watch it in just as a chronological sequence. Just watch them all, and the ones you like, enjoy, and the ones you don't try and make sense out of it. The continuity things are so out there, and they don't make sense sometimes. But just watch them for the enjoyment of them.
Yeah, I would argue that you could probably take any film in the series and watch it standalone. With the possible exception of 3D, you may have wanted to watch the original first.
Right, just to kind of get what they're talking about, right.
Because there is a direct tie-in. But the rest of them, I would argue, you could probably just watch as standalone
Yeah,
films.
No, that's a great point. You really can. And yeah, it was basically, as Tim not only has dulcet tones, but he has a much more eloquent way of putting things than I do, because that's kind of what the point I was trying to get, that he said it so well and succinctly. Yeah, you really could just watch each one on its own. You don't need to see the other ones. I mean, in fact, I think the original is such a legendary and iconic film that you don't even need to see it to be able to know the gist of it. So you could see the sequels and kind of, oh, okay, this is Leatherface. Now I see, because Leatherface is so different in each one anyway.
Well, let's move on to Leatherface Part 3. Well, it's called Leatherface Texas Chainsaw Massacre Part 3
right.
is the official title. This one came out in 1990, so this was 4 years later. This one did not have Tobe Hooper's involvement, and it definitely shows. So it was directed by Jeff Burr, written by David J. Shaw, starring Kate Hodge, Ken Foree, and R.A. Mihailoff. So this one's kind of interesting because it picks up as a kind of a sequel to the original film, but it kind of ignores the second one. So when you see the opening crawl, it talks about Sally from the first film being the lone survivor,
right,
and that she dies in a private health facility 3 years after the events of Part 1. And there's only one survivor of the Sawyer family called W.E. Sawyer, and so everybody presumes that he was Leatherface, and they think that the entire family was wiped out, and that Leatherface was just this alter ego of this lone survivor.
Right. And it's weird that they mention that, because it's like, obviously the audience knows the difference, but
yeah, the audience knows that Leatherface is still out there.
Right.
But what's kind of weird about this is, again, like we were saying, you can watch these films standalone because most of that tie-in is just the opening crawl.
Right.
If you don't even read the opening crawl, you wouldn't know the difference.
Right.
So.
And again, it's like now that since this just proves that point we were trying to make with Part 2, it's so different that you literally don't have to see Part 2, or you can watch it as a separate entity altogether, and it's fine.
Now, I actually enjoyed this one for about the first half hour. So it starts off kind of like the beginning of 2. You have this couple from California. They're kind of driving in the middle of Texas, and they end up getting run off the road. And so you kind of get the same buildup of how they're going to meet the family and stuff. I kind of enjoyed that part. Nothing totally original about it, but it wasn't bad. And then you start meeting members of the family, and this is where the thing went off the rails for me, because one of the lead members of the family is played by none other than Viggo Mortensen.
Yeah,
which is just crazy.
Yeah, and it's obviously it's starting the trend of A-list actors being in these sequels and then having great careers. It's
kind of amazing. You have Dennis Hopper in the second one. Almost every movie has some big name actor in it.
Right.
I'm not kidding you. So this starts it off. Viggo Mortensen in obviously a very early role before he got super famous. But man, he looks way too pretty for this movie. And this kind of starts this trend that happened in 4 as well, where the family just doesn't have that, for lack of a better term, that backwoods, scary, hillbilly look that you're used to from the first film. It's like they decided, you know, it would be scarier if we just cast supermodels.
Yeah,
as all these guys. It doesn't make any sense,
right? And you know, but the funny thing is, it's funny. I will say this: I kind of enjoyed this one way more than I thought, even through the whole thing. Even though when it got silly moments at the end, but I think it was solely because Ken Foree's character in it. I think his character, I just loved because, and it kind of had, you know, anytime he's in a movie, he's kind of got the ones I've seen him in, like in the remake of Halloween, you know, he's got that, like, he's like this trucker guy that comes and he's like a badass. And I just loved how he came in and was just like, you know, just like it's funny. You get to the one point where he just had it with the Sawyers. he just like goes on this rampage after him, and it's great.
Yeah, he's great, and he's probably the best part of this movie, to be honest.
Oh, easily the best part, yeah.
Leatherface is weird in this one. I didn't like his look. He has, like, wrestler hair. I said, why does he look like Hacksaw Jim Duggan?
I know, you expect him to go like, ho!
That's what he looks like. He's got, like, wrestler hair.
Yeah.
There's a trend of these movies to make Leatherface into this childlike character.
Right.
Which, in the first film, it kind of like that, but he was a lot more sinister about it. Yeah. The second one, he was definitely a lot more like that. The third one, like, really goes that all out.
Yeah, but and as bad as this one is, it only gets worse in the next one.
Oh, it gets worse. Yeah,
we'll get to that one. Believe me, because I got plenty of to say about the Leatherface in the fourth one. But it was weird, and so I guess now I've done some research on this because I kind of assumed this is what was going on, but I could not believe that was actually what they were trying to portray. But does he have a daughter in this, or is this like his little sister? Because I've seen a lot of debate on the internet, and actually on IMDb she's credited as Leatherface's daughter, that little girl.
Yeah, I saw that too, and she doesn't even look that freaky. So I mean, they didn't even bother to make a creepy girl.
She acts freaky, but yeah,
she acts freaky, but she's not really that creepy.
And did you notice who she is?
No.
She plays young Tina from Friday the 13th: The New Blood.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I looked that up, and she's actually so she actually started off a little horror cred there.
once a horror child, always a horror child.
Apparently, yeah, like the guy in the ring, which we'll get to in the remakes. The little
kid.
They
just pass him around.
Yeah.
This one kind of reminded me a little bit more of like a traditional late 80s slasher film, at least more than the second one did.
Right, and it kind of had a little bit of reminded me a little bit of the way that the Firefly family was, and in Devil's Rejects, how they had, they kind of were off, they had this, like, they looked normal, they just acted weird, kind of a thing,
right,
and it kind of had that element, and we know that obviously Rob Zombie took a lot of influence from Texas Chainsaw Massacre, so he may have grabbed a little from this too. Who knows?
Yeah, I'm just I just prefer the traditional, creepy feeling from the actual look and their behavior.
Right.
The whole thing where I look like I stepped off a Abercrombie and Fitch catalog, but I'm actually a killer thing.
Right.
I just don't like that.
Yeah, like American Psycho.
Yeah, well, I mean, Christian Bale could pull that
Right,
off.
yeah,
Though,
I guess so. He could.
But yeah, like it's just I don't know, something like that just doesn't click with me, and we'll find that out really in the fourth film.
Right, and and I wrote here as a note. I was like, I really enjoyed this one more as a generic horror film, like a regular horror film, more than a chainsaw film. Like because I mean, you like literally the way Leatherface was in this. You could have probably just had any mass murderer or any killer with a chainsaw. Essentially is how it was. He didn't have that same Leatherface dynamic as he did in the other ones, I don't think.
Yeah, it's a strange movie, and it was kind of hard for me to track down. Like you said, I don't believe there's a Blu-ray release, and I couldn't even find it to rent for a long time. I finally had to rent it from iTunes or something. I never do that.
Yeah, I just bought it on DVD because it was cheap enough that I said, you know what, I'll just get it at this point, and I didn't have the strength to go searching around.
Yeah, I would say it's the forgotten entry in the series. I've heard people talk fondly about it, kind of in a cult classic kind of way in retrospect, but I think it's overshadowed by the next film, which is technically part 4, which is Texas Chainsaw Massacre: The Next Generation, 1994. This one is infamous because it stars 2 big A-list actors, none other than Matthew McConaughey and Renee Zellweger.
Well, she is actually really, I mean, they're both really good in this. That's the thing.
They really are. And you can kind of see sometimes when you go back and see these early roles that they're easily the best actors out of the bunch.
You're like, you know what? They are so well, they took whatever like dreck that was handed to them and they played it as if it was an Oscar performance. It's like,
yeah, I think I'm pretty sure both of them have disowned this movie, if I'm not mistaken.
I know Renee Zellweger did. Like, she doesn't ever want to admit it. But I'll tell you one thing that I caught yesterday. Matthew McConaughey could technically never do that because this must be the first time he uttered that, because there was a part where he went, all right.
Yeah. I saw that.
I actually got up and said, oh my God. I was like, Julie, did you hear that? He said it. He said it. So there's no way he could ever totally disown that, because that is probably the first time he's uttered that on film. Well, so there, Matthew McConaughey, too bad.
Yeah, we got your number now.
Yeah.
So I put here in the rundown, if you think back, like the big name actors in these horror movies, like Johnny Depp was in Nightmare on Elm Street. Oh, that's cool. Kevin Bacon was in Friday the 13th. That's awesome. Yeah, that's when he first got his first start. And then you think of roles like Jennifer Aniston and Leprechaun, and you're like, oh, this one's kind of on that level. It's not on the Johnny Depp, Kevin Bacon level. It's definitely on the Jennifer Aniston level, but almost kind of worse, because this film is it's considered really, really bad. I didn't actually think it was as bad as I had been led to believe.
Right. It was actually much more. I thought I was going to have so much trouble getting through it, but I think maybe it's just because we know them so well now in their other careers, but I think Matthew McConaughey and Renee Zellweger, the fact that they were in it gave you something to watch, I guess, to some degree, even with all the lunacy that's going on around them.
Yeah, that could be. And the other thing is, I did not like it at all as a chainsaw movie.
No,
for the series, it is terrible. Yeah, but as just a general entertainment, it never bored me.
That's the thing, it didn't, and it should have. At some level, if you think of this plot,
it never bored me, and it should have. Right. What's interesting, it was I forgot to run down through the director and stuff, but it's directed by Kim Hinkle and written by Kim Hinkle. With somebody that's been in the franchise that long and has participated in it, how can you so get these characters wrong? Or are you just trying to do your own thing, and that's what happens? I don't know. It was very strange to me. And
the funny thing is, believe it or not, and they actually, if you notice, the 2 cameos of Franklin and Sally were in the movie. Not as their characters, but Paul Partain was in it. He was one of the hospital orderlies, and Marilyn Burns was rolled on the gurney at the end, and and it was actually Julie caught that. She goes, was that the one from the original film? And I said, I think you're right. I think it is. And then I looked it up to confirm it. So once again, see, the civil gore is rubbing off on my wife. She's looking at things and catching things. But yeah, so he had those in it. And I'm sure that was a nice favor to her. She probably still kept in touch with them. But it just you're right though. It's like you figure someone who has been part of the franchise, in its great part, would allow this to represent it in some way.
Because Matthew McConaughey gets to go full crazy in this one. He plays the typical impression that Matthew McConaughey people... That's how they do their impressions of the full, all right. I mean, the whole, like, as crazy as you've ever seen Matthew McConaughey, that's how he is in this movie.
Yeah, and the thing is weird about it is they have... people do that impersonation of Matthew McConaughey, and probably 95% of them have never seen this.
That's right.
That's the funny thing,
Yeah. And Renee Zellweger is actually really good in this. She plays kind of a nerdy, mousy type, which is right up her alley anyway.
Oh, yeah.
But, of course, she's very young in this, so she's playing a prom. They're going to prom, so she's supposed to be a teenager in this. But she does a really good job playing kind of a mousy, somewhat nerdy, but tries not to be nerdy girl.
And yeah, I mean, you can tell she's one of those nerdy, but girls. But when she takes the glasses off, she's attractive.
There you go, yeah.
And even though they do kind of like, even though she's never portrays this type of role in any of her films, really, that she never tries to be the revealing, sexy person. Like there's a scene where they make sure she gets a ripped dress and she's all wet, but it's quickly done, so she doesn't really, they don't portray her as anything like that. They portray her as kind of still that nerdy girl. But and I tell you though, as a character, she's a survivalist in that. I mean, because and it's funny, I noticed it and Julie noticed it at the same time. She goes, she is really running in those scenes where she's running. She's going really fast. And Julie's like, I don't think I ever saw anyone run like that in a horror movie before.
Yeah, this one again goes back to the thing where they make all the characters pretty, which is weird. Like Matthew McConaughey's part of the family. The rest of the family looks normal. Then you even have that woman that flashes her tits. I don't understand that role. There's this woman that flashes her tits at like the teenage boys that drive by or whatever.
Yeah,
I can't remember.
I think may be the only on-screen nudity in any of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre films.
Yeah,
by the way.
which is oddly enough, but she's like, I mean, she's all done up. She looks perfectly normal. It's really strange. Like every character of the family in this one, besides Leatherface, who again looks like a wrestler more than anything.
Right. And you want to know, it's funny you mentioned that woman, because this brings up another point that I don't think I noticed it until earlier. It was just kind of going through my head before we started to record to figure out if I want to miss anything. The fact that all the other films, they're always kind of eating the human things, and this, she brings home a pizza. That right there changes the whole family dynamic that's been the constant throughout the entire series.
And here's what was weird, and I don't know if you found this disturbing or if you noticed this, Brian, but some of the level of violence in this, especially towards women, was almost disturbing to me. And I watch a lot of horror movies, and there's a lot of women getting cut up and beat up and that kind of stuff. But this had a level of realism that really made me uncomfortable at times.
Yeah, no, and it was actually, and it started right off the bat with verbal abuse, actually, with the boyfriend and the girl, where he's like, first of all, she catches cheating on him, and then he basically just keeps talking to her to the point where she starts admitting it's all her fault, which is the most common kind of like verbal abuse you can, and that mental abuse that you hear all the time. That's sometimes far worse than the actual physical abuse that could happen. And and so it's like, you're right, and I don't think you could have uttered it more perfectly than you did on there, how you wrote that. Through, they have this really uncomfortable level of violence in there mixed with this outlandish comedy, and it's weird. It's just a very strange dynamic throughout the whole movie.
Yeah, I agree. I don't know. It was just something about it just disturbed me, like the level of violence, because the rest of the movie is so kind of offbeat and comedic. Then to have like these brutal scenes of violence against women just kind of rubbed me the wrong way. I don't know.
Right. And I mean, in the other films, obviously, there's always a woman that gets it pretty bad in the films, but the guys get it just as bad, if not worse. So this one, you're right. It takes it to a new level, and in all forms of, and I know a lot of people have said that is one of the biggest, deterrents. A lot of people have said, the biggest critics against horror films are that violence towards women in it like that. And so this one it will definitely aid their cause on that one, because it gets really bad. And like Matthew McConaughey, even in his comedic zaniness, is just totally just half the time he's like beating the crap out of that one girl for no reason. You don't know what is going on.
It was just very strange. Although I would argue about that whole horror movie thing against women. I mean, 99% of these movies, the final survivor is a woman. So I think.
I wasn't saying that was. I think that.
Yeah, I
A
agree.
lot of people,
that's what I would counter with, is that most of these survivors are women. So I think it's kind of to show you have to have that level of brutality to show that the survivor is going to come back and these are strong women and kind of stuff. So I kind of think it proves the opposite. But in this movie, it disturbed me. I don't care if the survivor was a woman. Some of that stuff just turned me off.
Right. And especially because they don't even, at some level, they don't even give her the full credit to survive in it. The way they make it, where the guy comes out, the weird guy, which we'll get to with the...
There's this whole subplot where the Sawyer family's backed by the Illuminati.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I don't think they used the word that, but that's basically what they're trying to imply, right? I mean, all of a sudden, and at first, I thought it was a joke because she said that. The woman said that to Renee Zellweger's character. But then later, when she's yelling at him, she's like, "You don't work for anything," and I'm like, "Oh, okay, he was lying." I guess he was just making that up, or she was making it up. But then you find that weird guy that comes in and basically just starts licking Renee Zellweger, and then he leaves. But then he comes back later in a limo later, and you find out it is kind of along the lines of that, and how that whole Sawyers were almost like an experimental thing. What the heck?
Weird. Really, really weird.
Yeah. But it's funny though, with this wackiness and weirdness, there was some redeeming things. Like I thought, I guess was it W.E.? Was he? I guess he was the brother, the one that the guy kept quoting lines. He was funny. Like one of his lines was, "Among other evils which being unarmed brings you, it calls you to be despised. That's Niccolo Machiavelli. Now get."
He's always quoting people.
Yeah, and just for some reason, I like that character a lot. And it's like, that's the thing with this weird thing. It had enough redeeming entertainment in it, but to be watchable. But as a chainsaw film, it's a disgrace to the franchise.
You probably need to see it just because it's such a curiosity. I don't know how to describe it. It's not a good chainsaw film, but you almost kind of have to see it just to believe it.
And you want to know the biggest indictment of that and proof that we've talked about the entire thing. We haven't even touched on Leatherface yet.
Exactly. He's kind of the least of your worries in this movie.
Oh my God. This has got to be the worst portrayal.
Oh God, yeah, it's terrible.
He doesn't even have a good mask. He's wearing a women's negligee half the time. I mean, and I saw someone defend it by saying, well, Leatherface takes on the persona of whatever mask he's wearing, and since he was wearing a woman's mask. No, that is not what he does. Okay, stop making that up. That was not in any of the mythology. If they want to throw it in for this, then at least explain it. But come on, that was not. He wore that weird women's mask in the first one, and he did not wear a dress. He kept on his same outfit. Not that I'm saying, look, if you want to be a cross-dresser, that's fine. I'm just saying, don't throw that in there as a defense to this garbage character that they portrayal of him. They totally neutralized him. He wasn't scary in this. He was silly.
Yeah, to me, like I said before, I think it was just a complete misunderstanding of the characters, and I don't get it.
Right.
I just don't get it.
Yeah, and another thing too is like even in the other films, right? It was almost like all the other Sawyers were really wacky and over the top, and Leatherface was pretty much just the same kind of type of like brutality thing. Yeah, he had a little childlike thing where he would be submissive to his family, but he'd have this brutality on this. It's like he wasn't scary, I mean, at one point he was just sitting there at the table, like you didn't even know it was Leatherface. He was he was kind of thin. He wasn't hulking at all.
Wasn't there one part where he's like playing a video game or like a speak and spell or something?
Yeah, I mean, what the heck was that? At one point he looked. I swear to God, he looked like Frankenfurter, Dr. Frankenfurter from Rocky Horror Picture Show, and sitting at the table. That's what I was thinking. Really, what were they thinking with the portrayal of him? I mean, it's.
I was getting like the Rocky Horror like music just started going off in my head.
Yeah, you know what would be an interesting experiment? Every time, like, make an edit of that film, and every time he comes in, just start playing the time warp theme or something. You know, like, oh God, yeah, this one was a piece of work. But yet again, it's like, and remember, I kind of said not to. I said like, yeah, it's a good thing we're doing these in series because some of these we would have done a standalone episode on. This might have worked as a standalone episode just because we could have gone through this forever.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So now that we probably got people like, wow, you know what? Now I think I gotta see this thing.
Yeah. Well, let's move on to...
Yeah, let's get on to something that was
I got Rocky
quality.
Horror. We got to do Rocky Horror Picture Show.
Yeah.
At some point.
We should. That's a classic.
That's going to be a fun episode. But anyway, let's move on to a much better movie. And I had not seen the remake and the prequel, I guess you would call it. It was kind of a sequel to the remake because the remake did so well.
Right.
I had not seen these in a number of years, probably since they were first released, and I had forgotten how great they are. They're really, really good. And I think of all of our Summer Slaycation villains that we're covering this summer, these to me are without a doubt, this is without a doubt the best remake of them all.
Oh, easily.
Hands down. It's way better than Nightmare on Elm Street, way better than Friday the 13th, way better than the other one that we're not going to give away yet. But
yes.
You could probably figure out by now.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is we're talking about the actual reboot of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre from 2003. And what I really liked about this remake is they could have gone a couple of different ways with this. They could have tried to completely remake the original movie,
right,
which would probably been a disaster, or they could have tried to just do something completely different. And instead, they kind of straddled that middle line. They decided, we're going to do something just different enough from the first movie, but we're going to include enough elements familiar to fans from the first movie that they're going to feel comfortable with it. And it was a really great balance. I thought they did a fantastic job with this film.
Right, and they kept that whole. They still had the Leatherface was a little even darker and more sinister in this, and they added characters. They kind of replaced the old man character with the Arlie Ermy character, which was so they did, but it still fit the dynamic well, but just in a different enough way.
It had the same tone, and they got away from all that comedic crap. They went back to the tone of the first film. It's very, very dark. About the only comedic elements, if you can call him back, is like you said, Arlie Ermy's character, which he's not very comedic. It's a very dark form of comedy.
It almost like his character that people laugh at his Full Metal Jacket type of over the top, that uncomfortable laughter.
Right, it's the same kind of comedy, quote unquote, you would get from Full Metal Jacket, if you can say.
Yeah, you know what I mean.
Yeah, everyone is backwoods scary again. Like the guy who wrote this was Scott Kosar. It was directed by Marcus Nispel, and they got it completely 100%. They understood what the first movie was all about, and they just kind of modernized it and brought it up to date. And continuing our A-list trend that stars Jessica Biel.
Right.
So
and I mean, think about it, Jonathan Tucker.
Yeah, Jonathan Tucker's great.
I mean, Mike Vogel, Eric Balfour, they've been in a lot of stuff. Erica Learson's definitely got her horror cred. She was in the sequel to The Blair Witch, Book of Shadows, and she was in something else, another horror movie. So she, you got some people with horror cred in there. You got some people with just big A-list.
Yeah.
People in there. And remember, it's funny that we were saying that this was the best out of the. And remember, before that, later on, they tapped Marcus Nispel to do the Friday the 13th remake. Obviously, He didn't succeed as well as he did on this one, but
No, but even so, I didn't dislike the Friday the 13th remake.
No. I'm just saying,
So,
it's like, in comparison, he did, this one obviously hit the mark better than
right.
than
Yeah,
that one
it did. But so it kind of goes to show you, he still has, he still gets it,
right,
for the most part. There were some great sequences in this one. I threw a couple of them here in the rundown. There's the great shot where in this one they kind of flip the script and the hitchhiker is a woman.
Right.
And she's not the kind of crazy. She's been traumatized by the family.
And she's not a Sawyer, really.
No, she's not a Sawyer. She's been traumatized, and she shoots herself, and so you get this great shot of the hole literally in the back of her head as the camera zooms back out through her head and through the windshield.
Yeah, as they're screaming, so you get this
oh my god, it's an incredible scene. And then another one I'd put, that was one of my favorites, is so there's a sequence where Jessica Biel's hot wiring the van, and they've sabotaged it so that the wheels just fall off of it. And all of a sudden, without warning, Leatherface saw just comes ripping through the back of the van. It is so awesome.
And they repeated something similar in the into the end of the prequel too of this, which we'll get to, where you don't expect his saw to come through a place, and it does. So so obviously the remakes definitely go for more I think the shock. But you know what it does is it continues without the musical cues, which is what I think is so frightening about the first one. Remember how in the original how you said we would always say how Leatherface would just come out of nowhere. They kind of continue that with this without the true musical cue.
Right,
to do it.
Right.
And it's funny, I'll say that because my sister-in-law, we were actually talking about this weekend, she does an interesting thing when she watches horror movies. A lot of people watch horror movies, and when they're afraid of it, what do they usually do? They cover their eyes, right? She covers her ears. She holds her ears because the musical cue and the jump musical is what startles her. So, and I'm like, it's funny. I said, it's funny now watching all the Texas Chainsaw Massacres, the original one completely takes that out, and it kind of continues with these to some. I mean, they have way more music obviously than the first one in it, because that's just the way movies are made today. But it's not the same where you hear like he's approaching.
It's not telegraphed.
That's it. Perfect. Yes, but that's the word I was looking for. Yes, telegraph. And they don't do that in any of these, so she would have a hard time getting through these basically.
Yeah, this one just had some really, really cool scenes, and it makes me wish I had seen it in the theater, because I bet the audience went nuts on this one opening night. Like, I could just imagine watching this with a crowd would have been fantastic.
Oh, yeah. I mean, like any good horror movie, like this, that it's fun to see it in the crowd because you love to see everyone react and the jump. In fact, a lot of times I've gone and back, like, I think it was Paranormal Activity. I went so 3 times in the theater, and the second time, mostly I was looking to see the reaction of the people because I knew what was coming, and I like to see everyone else's reaction. So it's funny. So I can imagine what this one must have been like.
This one is very interesting in that you get the first shot of Leatherface without his mask.
Right, and he looks like, what did you say he looked like? Skull-like. Yeah.
I thought
Skeletor.
It was actually kind of cool, though. It was
he looked like
really
Skeletor.
Cool. Yeah, I liked it. I thought it was interesting. I mean,
I did too, because he wasn't just deformed, like a weird, like, kind of like with a
sort of like Jason,
face.
yeah.
Right. He actually had you could see it, like, what? I don't blame the guy now for wearing a mask.
And I don't know if the comics predated this movie or if this movie predated the comics, but that's the way he's depicted in the comics as well.
Oh, interesting.
Mask. And if you haven't read any of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre comics, they're actually really, really good. I had a bunch of them at one time, and they were actually really, really entertaining. But great remake. If you haven't seen this one since it came out, definitely go revisit it. It's actually really, really good. So that brings us right into the next film, which is Texas Chainsaw Massacre: The Beginning. Came out 3 years later in 2006, largely due to the success of the reboot. It was directed by Jonathan Liebesman, written by Sheldon Turner, starring Jordana Brewster, Matt Bomer, and Diora Baird. And this one, like I said, is a prequel, so it talks about kind of the origins or the earlier days of the Sawyer family, and especially the R. Lee Ermey character, who was so popular in the remake.
Which is, I like that they did that, because it really goes into, it's almost more his origin story. than Leatherface's.
Yeah, it really is. Because Leatherface is kind of a constant in this. And it is interesting in that we should point out that in the remake and the beginning, Leatherface is not a Sawyer, he's a Hewitt.
Right, it's Hewitts now. They're the Hewitts, yeah.
Yeah, so there's kind of more of a different backstory, a different take on the Leatherface character. But this one really closely matches the tone and feel of the remake. They didn't want to stray too far away from that success. So it feels very, very similar, especially when I watched them back to back like I did.
Right.
So you get kind of the same feel, the same grittiness, the same realism, the same brutality, not a lot of comedy.
Right, and they went, they kept that. They kept the really the pretty characters, for the victims this time, not like the prequel started doing with the Sawyers.
Right. I did have a couple of nitpicks as compared to the first movie. I mean, the remake. I mean, I didn't think the cast was quite as likable this time around, notably because of the absence of Jessica Biel, probably. Yeah. But I didn't think the cast by the cast I mean the victims weren't quite as sympathetic this time around, I guess you could say.
I mean, women in terms of the attractiveness of the women, they kept it the same.
yes, absolutely. And then also Leatherface really doesn't get going until the end of the film. And I really didn't care for it. He had kind of like a half mask on for most of the movie, which I didn't really care for. I kind of like the full skin mask look to him a little more. So, but those are really minor nitpicks. It's still a really, really entertaining film.
Right. Yeah. Like one nitpick I had is funny is again with Leatherface is at the where, I mean, I kind of wrote this. I mean, it's funny to say, is it out of character? Because, it was still, he was developing at this point. But the scene when they're at the dinner and Deora Baird's character is there and she's been, like, just brutalized already. It's amazing she's still alive at this point in the movie. She's got no teeth left. She's barely functional. And then he goes over and he just walks by and Leatherface just slits her throat. And I'm like, why would he do that? Almost all the other times he's been sent to kill people with specifically his chainsaw. He's not just a murderer. He's got an agenda basically with this chainsaw. He's usually just chopping them up. This seemed out of character to him for me, and I don't know why. I noticed it so much, but it just seemed weird to me. It seemed like something maybe like Ari Ermey's character would do, or one of the other. If there was any other. Hewitts / Sawyers, obviously they're Hewitts in this, but, that family to do that. It seemed weird that he would just go slit their throat like a regular killer. And it's funny that when I was watching it, the Blu-ray version I had a couple of deleted scenes, including 3 alternate endings, which I watched. And one of the alternate endings had, at the scene, the way it ended, sorry, spoiler alert, people, if you didn't see it yet, but the end when he kills Jordana Brewster's character with the chainsaw coming through the seat, there was a version shot where he just slit her throat with something. And he took that out, which I'm glad, because that would have been like twice as annoying to me.
Yeah.
The fact that they did. So that, I don't know, that irked me. So there was a little things. I mean, granted, it's a different director. Maybe he wanted to, maybe there was this, they wanted to change it up a little bit. But to me, I don't think that just kind of, it kind of stood out as such a stark difference from the Leatherface character that they had, and even in the remake and the rest of this movie. So I don't know, it's like his other kills were mostly chainsaw related, or he puts him on the hook, or hit him with a mallet, a big thing, So but the fact of him just to see him like cold bloodedly slit the girl's throat, just I'm like, that's not Leatherface. That's kind of taking me out of this whole thing for a second, but.
Yeah, but still a great movie.
Right.
Yeah,
Minor nitpicks.
Very, very brutal. Probably more brutal than the first one. I mean,
I mean, and like especially where and what I like is that they explain a lot of things you like. You may not know you wanted answered, like the part why that uncle in the remake has got no legs. Well, They show you how he's got this.
Yeah, exactly.
Too much. And when I say see it, you see it to its full extent. Literally, Leatherface. Because he's shot in the leg, or just one, mind you, and Arlie Ermey decides Leatherface is going to do surgery. As he puts it, he cuts off one leg and then makes it to cut the other one off. And in a classic Ermy line, when the mother goes, "Why did you do that?" And he's like, "Balance." It's like, and you gotta love that though. It's like, wow, that's so Arlie Ermy. It's like,
it's great. And those two films, you need to go back and revisit those if you haven't seen them in a while.
You do.
I was really impressed. The next one up is Texas Chainsaw 3D, which came out in 2013, directed by John Lucenhop, written by Adam Marcus and Deborah Sullivan, starring Alexandra Daddario, Tanya Raymond, and Scott Eastwood. Now, full transparency, I did not get to this one in time for the podcast. I just ran out of time. I had so many things going on. My daughter's birthday this weekend, just busy. So it was good that I got the 6 or so in that I did. So I'm going to let Brian take the lead on this one. Although I did see this film in 2013 when it came out. So I'm not a complete stranger. I do remember a few things about it, but I'm going to let Brian take the lead on it.
Right, yeah. And so this one, it's funny. It's because this one kind of goes that it's the direct sequel now to the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre. So this not only is forgetting 2, 3, and 4, as if they've never happened. But now it's almost like, okay, that reboots you liked? Well, those don't count either. This is not a sequel or prequel to the reboot. This is now, it's basically as if you want to try and find a chronological now to the current state we're at, it's you watch the original and now you watch this one. And it starts, and it's funny because it was done by, one of the writers was Adam Marcus, who obviously wrote and directed Jason Goes to Hell, which kind of had a similar theme to it, as if, granted, they explained why all those other previous Friday the 13th could have happened, but it basically doesn't really make any reference to any of them other than, like this, the world knows Jason now kind of a thing. So he kind of has a history, I guess, of taking this angle at it. So yeah, it's almost like, and it's almost also like Halloween H2O, where everything after pretty much Halloween 2 didn't exist, and you take off from here. So it's not an uncommon tactic, I guess, that horror films take. It's just weird because they rebooted it and they had really 2 good reboots. That why they chose to kind of forget the reboots and continue back with the original story.
The reboots on their own would be a great start to a franchise, in my opinion.
Right. So I don't know why they decided to do this. And I liked it, but I don't know why they did it. And I mean, it's funny because I don't remember when I saw this. I saw it after it had been released on home release. I didn't see it in the theater, but it's funny, by watching it, you almost forget that it was a 3D movie, because other than a couple of scenes, it doesn't seem like they overtly go to cheap 3D, so to speak. Because there's one scene obviously where he flings a chainsaw and you're like, oh wow, that would have been cool in 3D. Obviously that was for this movie. There's a couple of things where you could see they zoom in on like blood, and the blood's kind of hitting the screen, and they go into this like the end where they're doing that like the gears moving around, and it looks like they were trying to do an effect. But most of the thing was it just went along as if I think the movie came first, I guess. But so they once again, they kind of, now not only did they go to the original thing, but they still kind of changed the mythology on some level, because now they it starts off with basically this vigilante group going after the Sawyers again. This almost takes like, did this come before Devil's Rejects or not? I can't remember.
This was after Devil's Rejects.
Okay, it was after. So to me, I'm like, that's what I thought of instantly. In that opening scene of Devil's Reject, when they're corner the fireflies and they're just shooting them up, and basically this is kind of what happens in this, where the police now know what happened when the events of the original film, and they actually kind of open the film with scenes from the murders of the first one, and kind of like recap you to what happened in case you didn't see the original. So, and then it kind of takes place right after, where the police officer is going, and he goes by himself, and he basically calls out Drayton Sawyer, who was played by Bill Moseley, which is kind of interesting. He's basically taking over Jim Sidow's role, because of course he passed away. So it's kind of interesting. It's very weird to see a very kind of tame Bill Moseley after seeing this Chop Top. But so he's in there, and basically there's just a whole bunch of other Sawyers which came out of the woodwork apparently, and they're trying to defend Leatherface, and the cop's just like, look, we know what he did, just let him out, nothing's gonna happen, we'll we're gonna take him away. But this group of vigilantes come, it's Texas, I guess, right?
Yeah.
So this whole group of crazy people come out there, and even though the poor sheriff is trying to calm everyone down and try and handle it, they basically lose control and they just start shooting it up. It becomes a giant firefight in there, including a mother with a newborn child gets gunned down, and Leatherface is somewhere in there, but you don't know what happens to him. You just see everyone else pretty much get shot up, and then they light the entire house on fire, and everyone they were like posing, and with which obviously comes to play later why that picture was taken in the newspaper. So they take this picture of all the vigilantes there, and so forth. So then the movie cuts ahead to the main character Heather, which is played by Alexandra Daddario, which definitely continues the giant boob trend that these films
which we've been remiss in mentioning.
Yeah,
but
even though I've touched on them, but we kind of just passed ahead because we got the theme of the film itself. But yeah, so she continues with that. And it's funny, I did see something on there, say a review, and I was doing some research and saying most of the 3D was used to project the boobs out of the screen, which cracked me up because I'm like, I just noticed them as regular, obviously because I didn't see it in 3D, so now it's kind of interesting. I kind of want to go see it in 3D. But anyway, so it's funny because they start her right off. She's working as a butcher. And she's got this, jet black hair. If you've seen Alexandra Daddario in all her other films, she does not have jet black hair, but they gave her that. And they kind of hint at this dark side of her. And you basically find out she inherited Oh, I'm sorry. You know what? I did cut off. Not that I want to go through scene by scene, but the mother that was gunned down with the baby was found by two of the vigilantes, and they basically take the baby and adopt it in her own, which you find out later to be is this character, Heather. And, so she's basically, she finds out she inherits this house by her grandmother that she never knew because she was adopted, and she finds out by her parents. I think the parents give some line like, we took you in, you were taken out of a heap of shit, or some crazy line described. Basically, these her adoptive parents are rotten people, and they basically gonna try and make it seem like they saved her out of there, but so she goes along. She was supposed to go with her friends. Again, it still has that Texas Chainsaw thing of a group of people traveling through Texas, and they go basically to go. She gets to see her inheritance, which is this house. Obviously, the lawyer was played by that guy. I forget. He's in Hatchet too, and he's been in a bunch of stuff where he's always kind of this crazy old guy in it.
Yeah. And
he's the lawyer, and he basically is like, well, you inherited from your grandmother, and just make sure you read the note she left you. Make sure you read the note. And so the five of them come there, and it's, but basically, long story short, you find out that Leatherface still survived all that stuff, and he's basically alive in the basement. And, so they kind of, it seems like this prequel wanted you to kind of be on the side of the Sawyers for the first time.
Right.
And so, Heather was a likable character, and you kind of realize that, she discovers what this town did to her family that she never knew, and she obviously doesn't, she's kind of like, obviously she's related to them, so she's going to always have that little switch that could be flipped, apparently.
Which is kind of weird, because I've never thought of Leatherface as that sympathetic a character.
No, he's not really. He's still not really, I wouldn't say sympathetic. I think she's a bit more of a sympathetic character, but he's not in it still. He's still a killer, and he's still a murderer, and he's wearing a really odd sweater. I do want to say through this. Again, with the outfit changes they give him in this, it's very odd, but yeah, so it's kind of like, this one does definitely a different dynamic to all the other ones, and definitely, Adam Marcus has this style that you can kind of see that he definitely had, you can see if you see Jason Goes to Hell, you see that same feel to this at some points. So yeah, but the thing is, overall, I really like this one, but I kind of still look at it as it's almost its own thing. I still have, because the first one was so uniquely done and so gritty, and none of them have matched that. So even if this one was a direct sequel or not, it's almost like it could work as a standalone.
I would have to go, the original being my favorite. Part 2, I guess I kind of have to put in second place just because it's got Tobe Hooper's involvement. And then I would definitely put the remake and the prequel right there up with it. And then probably 3D would be next, and then followed by 3 and 4. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I would. Yeah, I'd have to put that way. And I mean, granted, I'm a little biased to this one too because of my things towards Alexandra Daddario. And it's so funny because there's one point where she has this, I put in the rundown, her gravity-defying shirt, because literally there's this scene where she's running around in this button-down shirt that literally has one button to it, and it gets ripped off in a scene. So she popped open literally her shirt. It defies all sorts of physics how this thing is not popped open, exposing her breasts. And it's like, I'm just like, and at that time she had not done the True Detective scenes where she's pretty much, leaves nothing to the imagination. So at that point I'm like, seriously? But yeah, and the funny thing is though, it wasn't just done as a gratuitous element in the film. It actually, the fact that her shirt got ripped open and then even when it was buttoned still was so exposing everything was actually a plot device, because she had this weird birthmark that they referenced earlier that was what clued in Leatherface to realize that they were finally related.
Oh yeah, a plot device. That's
right.
What they're calling it.
Yeah,
days.
But it really was. I know it sounds so funny, especially coming from me. But yeah. But yeah, it actually used as an interesting plot device that her shirt was done that way. But yeah, so, and then it had its cringeworthy lines in there, and it was like to the point of where, it's almost like a little far-fetched to the point where she's great, when she realizes Leatherface is getting beaten down by the mayor there, the Hartman, and so she escapes and throws the chainsaw at him and says, "Do your thing, cuz."
God.
And then I'm just like, it's like, that's like, oh, really? They're going to go there with that? But yeah. And then, and then it was funny though. I did like the albeit a little bit surprised when the cop shows up, and I really thought he was going to, say, look, I know he's a bad guy, but I gotta take your cousin in. And he just kind of turned a blind eye and repeated whatever the Hartman said in the beginning, like, oh God, I forgot what it was, but something like, oh God, some religious statement, basically about it, like about how he could, and he just turned his back on him and let kind of Leatherface and Heather walk off as if nothing happened. So I kind of like that element of it a little bit, even though I didn't expect it. I really thought they were going to do the whole, oh, well, he's got to be taken away or something was going to happen. But either way. But, I mean, overall, though, I definitely, while it wasn't as good as the other reboot/remakes, it was I still liked it. Although I have such a hard time at connecting any of them to the original, because the original was just done in such a fantastic style
and it was done so much earlier and on such a different budget. It's hard to even tie it even conceptually into the other ones.
Right. And the gritty feel of the first one just it loses something when you make it modernized.
Well, let's look towards a new Texas Chainsaw movie coming out soon, which is Leatherface.
And this supposedly is a prequel to the original.
Yeah,
and so it's along this line. And I noticed, and this is the first time I noticed this today, there's a character in IMDb named Hartman, which was the guy I said was like that head vigilante / guy who became mayor in the 3D version. So I can only assume that this is a descendant of him somehow.
And I see here in the rundown, we may find the origin of Nubbins, which is the hitchhiker from the original.
Right, which apparently I think he got his name in the second one. They mentioned it.
Right, Nubbins is the corpse that Chop Top carries around.
Right.
In
That's
the second one, yeah. And I got to see him at Mad Monster Party too, the actual Nubbins, which was cool.
Oh, really?
Yep.
Oh, that's cool.
So yeah, you get some insight onto that. The trailers for this one look really, really good.
It does. And this is to the point of where, I know it comes out October 20th, but supposedly it's getting a month early release on DirecTV. Now, I don't have DirecTV. My parents do. It's funny, not at their they do still have it. That's right. They keep switching back and forth, but now they think they still have DirecTV. It's almost to the point of where I think I want to go watch it early because I don't know if I can. I kind of don't think I can wait until October 20th because basically since we watched all these other ones, I'm kind of like in that zone of Texas Chainsaw Massacre. So it's kind of fun that a new one is coming out so soon.
Yeah, I was worried because this one has Leatherface as an actual kid, like as a child, and I was like, I don't want this to turn into like Muppet Babies. Where it's just
can you imagine? It's like Hatchet Baby or whatever, like
Yeah, like little Jason run around, little Freddy, and
there's a great Kickstarter though. How great would that be? A parody of Muppet Babies, but with all the kids serial killers.
They call it Slasher Babies.
There you go. See, I like it.
Yeah. That could go really wrong though, but at least from the trailers, it looks pretty cool. I don't know,
right? And that one where he's like that one trailer, the latest one where he's like where it looks like roadkill, and he pops up and it's supposedly Leatherface. But here's the thing: now the plot point in it supposedly is you don't know who Leatherface is in this because it's apparently 4 people escape. They kidnap a nurse, and 4 of them escape from a mental institution. And supposedly the plot of this film is you don't know until the end which one of them becomes Leatherface. Now, it's funny because, and this is where that whole thing where I kind of laughed when I actually said Leatherface early in the beginning. One of them, the escapees, I believe is a woman.
Oh.
So, now you would think, okay, well, that's impossible. She's not it. But, you know what? It wouldn't shock me if they tried to pull that one off, as that's maybe why they explain why he would and
why he cross dresses and that
right.
kind of stuff.
I mean, you never know what they're going to try and do here with this. So, I mean, and it's funny because there's one kid, like I saw in the IMDb, I'm like, okay, that one looks like he'd be the one that would become Leatherface, but it's almost too obvious. I have a feeling they have a good opportunity here to make a really cool, because you usually don't have that element in an origin story. It's pretty much, hey, okay, let's watch him grow up and see what he becomes. They did with Michael Myers in Halloween.
That's a neat premise. I like that.
Right. I know. I think it's kind of, I'm actually really kind of excited to see how they go. I just hope they don't screw it up in some stupid way, but I'm really looking forward to this. And like I said, I'm going to give everyone a fair shot to be Leatherface in this. It's almost like they should have done promoted it place your bets. Who do you think is going to be Leatherface? like they did. Remember when the Harry Potter, the Goblet of Fire came out and they had the promos who are you rooting for? Who are you behind? Harry or whatever.
Yeah.
The other, Fleur Delacour. It's like, so that'd be kind of cool if they kind of did a little thing. I think once it gets closer, maybe we should do a Civil Gore poll. See who thinks. Who do you think Leatherface will end up being? Be kind of fun.
Yeah, that sounds cool. So, what's our beer pairing this week?
Okay, well, it's kind of a funny one. So, when I did my research and searching around for a beer, I discovered one called Chainsaw Ale, which couldn't have been more of a better pairing, of course. However, it's something that no longer exists. But from the same brewery, they have something now called Sawtooth Ale, which I can only imagine was maybe developed from the changes. So I figured, and plus Sawtooth, it's close enough. So we're going with it. So yeah, it's from Left Hand Brewing, based out of Longmont, Colorado, and it seems like it got some favorable reviews on Beer Advocate and such. So you know what, that's what we're going with either way. So
sounds
check it
good.
out, and I think you can find it. So Sawtooth Ale from Left Hand Brewing, because I've seen some Left Hand stuff from locally sometimes. So.
And our trivia question from last week, or 2 weeks ago, I guess we should say, was what was the name of Freddy Krueger's one-off MTV show in 1988? And this one was, of course, the Freddy Krueger Hour.
Yeah, so simple, but yet Like, I did not remember it until I looked up the trivia. When I was doing the trivia, I'm like, that's what it was called? I just assumed it was called the Freddy Krueger Show or whatever, and I didn't even know it had a name, in all honesty.
I am shocked that was a one-off. Absolutely shocked.
Yeah, so shock, surprise, right?
So now the trivia question this week, you might on first thought go, oh, this one's super easy.
Right.
But I think there's a couple of contenders for what the answer could be.
Right, I think so, especially from the source.
Yeah. So Entertainment Weekly, which I read every week religiously.
Me too. I've had a subscription for the past like 12, 14 years possibly.
That's like my Bible. If you're a pop culture nerd and you don't subscribe to Entertainment Weekly, like, you're missing out because
and that's my longest running subscription. I've had several subscriptions over the time. That is one where I've had from the moment I subscribe to it. It's something I don't even pay attention to it. I have it on auto renew. It's like I look forward to it every week. Still, it's by far one of my favorite magazines that's ever been created. So
now they tend to be a little lenient on their reviews. Yeah, they tend to skew up. So I always try to typically I'll knock like half a letter grade off of every review, and that's what I think the real score should be.
Yeah. I don't. Yeah, and I don't even. It's funny. It's like I don't even pay attention so much to their reviews. I read them, but I don't even pay attention to their letters anymore because of that reason. I just like to read their opinion on it, and they definitely have a lot of good. I love their little sequences. Like they have their bullseye at the back, where they have different things of what's popular. It's just a really fun magazine to read.
And they have a must list, which is awesome. It's like their 10 things for the week. And it could be a book, a movie, a TV show, a podcast.
Right.
Stuff
which hopefully, if you're listening,
that's
I think goal. You guys should listen to Civil Gore.
Yeah, that's our goal. Yeah, Entertainment Weekly. We're plugging your show, so you should plug ours. Must list, Civil Gore, put it on there. But good magazine. I don't know how we got on that subject, but
because of the trivia.
Oh, that's right. Trivia. Yeah. So they voted the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre the second scariest film ever made. What was the first?
Right.
Now, keep in mind, this is Entertainment Weekly. It's a mainstream publication. It may not be the one you would think as a seasoned horror fan that you are.
Right. So, I mean, I get it. I see the answer, and I completely respect their answer.
Yeah. So,
but I may not have had that as my choice. But
and don't Google it. Don't cheat.
Yeah, don't cheat. Yeah, definitely don't cheat. See if you can do a real good guess. Yeah. See what you can think of. It's more fun at some level. Yeah. To just guess it.
Well, I hope you guys have enjoyed our retrospective on Leatherface. It's kind of a weird franchise, as we said. We will be back next week to start a brand new villain for you. I'm not going to tell you what it is, but we'll drop another clue. I hope you guys enjoyed my little teaser of Leather and Lace music
that
video. That was kind of a funny Easter egg I threw in there for you. I'm sure most people either were completely confused or immediately got it.
Yeah, they're like, okay, where is this podcast going now? What kind is it? But Tim is really good at the tease.
Yeah, so we'll drop another tease. Although the caliber of villains you've seen so far, you probably know who the fourth one is. So,
yeah, there's only so many people that could be left to fill that spot. But
and I think this has been such a successful series in terms of downloads. I think we'll repeat it next year with another batch of 4, and we'll do another 4 2-parters because I think we've got plenty to do.
Easily. In fact, remember when we were coming up with them, we originally were going to do. We had I think 8 right off the bat that we were going to have 8 single.
Yeah, so we definitely have enough for at least next year to continue this.
Yeah, we have next year's down, down for sure. So yeah, and hope you guys like these different sequences, where we do these special, series, because I know we have fun doing it. Like because there's nothing, like I had said this before, when you start watching a particular film in a series, especially the first one, and it's a series that you like, you almost want to start watching all of them right away. So this gives us a great opportunity, especially because, I have not seen all the Texas Chainsaw Massacres, and especially in such a close proximity to each other ever. I don't think actually.
Yeah, it's kind of cool to see them all back to back like that for sure.
Right, and it's funny. It made me appreciate the first one more than I ever did before.
Yeah,
and I always held it in really high regard. But now it's like it really shows how simple you can make a horror film and still have it be so fantastic.
Now, we haven't done this in a while, so I'm going to go ahead and do it. But make sure you check us out on Twitter, Facebook. Our Twitter handle is @CivilGorePod. Facebook is facebook.com/CivilGorePodcast. We're on Instagram. We're on all the major podcast outlets, just in case a friend steered you here and you don't know how to get it to subscribe. And also, please leave us an iTunes review. We have not forgotten about our contest.
Right.
To win a pristine copy of Paul Blart 2.
Right. It's collecting dust now, more than it ever has.
We're kidding.
So...
You're gonna win a really cool Blu-ray. We haven't decided which one, but it'll be one you like.
Yeah, and actually, there might be another thing thrown in that Tim was talking about today that he offered me if I wanted it in my collection, but I said no. Let's save it for our prize
I'm forming an entire prize box.
Right.
I've got some really cool stuff, and if you're a horror fan, you're going to love these little trinkets and stuff I'm collecting. And the big winner of our iTunes review contest will probably get some bonuses thrown in addition to their signed Blu-ray. I'll even sign it for you. But it's just leave us a review on iTunes, and you'll be automatically entered to win. There's not very many iTunes reviews right now because it's a pain in the ass for people to do it usually.
I know. Yeah.
So just that little bit of effort could pay off in a pristine new horror Blu-ray for your collection, and right. Paul Blart 2 maybe.
Yeah, but we'll do that one by request. If you really want it, we'll make sure you get it.
So please leave us a review and we'll hook you up. But I haven't decided on the end date for the contest yet. I'm waiting for a few more reviews. We got to make it somewhat competitive.
Right. Because right now I think we have 5.
Yeah, we have like 5. So let's at least get into double digits before we start passing out stuff. So
yeah, and I want to say I think it's funny because I've heard 2 different things. I've heard iTunes ranks people podcasts on the reviews, but also the download and subscriptions is what it is. I think it's subscription, but. The more reviews we get, the more, and because like we said, now we gave you a surprise goal that Tim and I do, and it's funny. This is not a joke. I know we joke a lot on the show, but every time I look into that must list and I see like they talk about a podcast, I said, oh, that would be so awesome if someone from there discovered our podcast and just wrote anything on it, even if they said, you know what, it stinks. I just want to see
that actually
my
does
name
bring
in there.
That does bring up a good point, Brian. If you can, and you've got like a podcast app or something, or iTunes, definitely subscribe to us, even if you can't listen to it religiously every week. Just because of the subscription and the auto downloads helps our download numbers,
right,
and helps us get visibility on iTunes. So even if you don't plan on listening to it, right when it comes out, if you just do that auto subscribe, it helps our numbers a great deal.
It was kind of funny. My mom, she overheard me talking about it, and she goes, oh yeah, how do I listen to that podcast thing of yours? So yeah, hey, you know what? If any mothers out there, go help your mom listen to a good horror movie podcast, because most parents sometimes they don't know how to do these things.
The problem is I don't have any friends that listen to horror podcasts. Hardly any of my friends watch horror movies, which is sad.
Well, Ken does.
Ken does. Yeah, I got Ken does, but a lot of my friends just don't watch. They're not into horror movies, so I'm kind of by myself.
We need to get them in there.
Yeah.
Hey, who's it? It was my brother Seth. He said, remember? I mean, granted, okay, he's my brother Seth, but he did say, he said when he hears our podcast, it totally gets him into the mood to watch horror movies. So if that's the bare minimum of what we're doing, that makes my whole day. Just hearing something like that.
Yeah, I've actually had people tell me that one of our episodes made them go watch the movie we were talking about, that's cool. That's cool.
That's really, listen, we do it because we love horror movies, we love talking about them, and, the fact that you guys enjoy it even more better, but especially, like, that's just a bonus to me. That's like playing with house money to hear someone that, like, hey, I listened to your show, and now I like this movie, or now, I went out and went and watched this because you guys said it was good. Because that's cool, because I know so many times, I've listened to a podcast and done something because of what they talked about, whether because I've listened to other horror movie podcasts, listened to other movie podcasts, and said, oh, let me go watch this now. So, I get it. So when I hear that, it's just awesome.
Yeah, just trying to bring a little joy to your life, a little
Yes.
happiness. That's all it is.
That's all we want to do.
Just put something positive into the world. That's all I can say.
Exactly. See, Tim's using his dulcet tones for nothing but good.
Yeah, just put a little positivity into the world, and you've done your duty as a member of society.
Exactly.
All right, well, we're going to wrap it up because I got a bathroom to paint.
Yes, I was going to say, I've already gone 10 minutes over what I promised Tim we would do, and I do not want his lovely wife, Olivia, mad at me because of the...
That would be a real horror show if she gets get on her bad side, so...
Yeah, and I still don't... He says I don't believe there is a bad side. She's so nice. I don't know where you see this, but yeah.
No, she's an angel, especially to put up with me, so...
Yeah, but both Julie and Olivia, they get along so well, which is kind of funny because I think they need each other to deal with Tim and I. So.
Yeah, God bless them. Oh my gosh, I don't know how they do it. So we'll see you guys back here next week for more fun.
Yes, and look out for the teas.